All right, everybody. This is the 15th of March 2023, and we're heading into a period that it looks like is going to be some sort of musical chairs for the wealthy. Sounds like we may not have a part in that, but I think it's going to affect us quite a bit. As above, so below, we're going to go through all the influences that point to the musical chairs of the wealthy. Let's go surfing. Everybody ready? I don't know, man. I'm doing this surf report as we speak. The Dow Jones is plummeting, kind of like a knife. Not quite like a knife yet. Oil is plummeting like a knife. And the next bank to possibly go, Credit Suisse, under strict scrutiny. I hear Schwab is a part of that as well. So there is already, looks like, a musical chairs for the wealthy, doesn't it? But there's a lot of support in the stars for this phenomenon. And by the way, I want to point you down to the lower right-hand side. The congruency score, in my opinion, the lowest triangulation or lowest congruency score probably in the history of surf reporting. And there's good reason for that. First, we have a very strong Pisces influence still. That's, a lot of planets, okay? Then we have a strong Aries influence because we've got that new moon. But we also have in the dream bot luxury, mansions, really great food. As you're going to see, it's very Venus and very Taurus, both of those together. And it just so happens Venus is going into Taurus. So the collective unconscious is clearly painting a picture, in my opinion, of that. Meanwhile, the I-Ching says decrease, and there is a lot of decrease in this astrology. First, we have the lunar phase as we are waning for about 2 weeks. We're right in the middle of that as we head towards the new moon in Aries. We have an extra dim Mercury, so our mental aptitude and logic is at probably an all-time low in this year. And then speaking of year, we have the annual zodiacal phase is ending as well. Pisces is the end of the zodiac. So there's this phasic decrease and mental decrease, very much warranted here. We're going to go through all that when we get to the astrology. But I mean, who knows? We've got a lot going on. We've got a lot of squares, big shifts. We've got Venus going into Taurus, and then we've got Mercury leaving Pisces going into Aries. We also have the sun going into Aries. We also have the new moon in Aries, and all happens in this week. So it's all rapid. It's all fast changing, big shifts. And it's happening this week. And, there's more. There's more after this week. But let's just focus on this week, all right? And a low congruency score, but there is that overlap. Aries is the middle there. And that includes the Venus going into Taurus. Anyway, so you have an element of decrease. That's warranted. That's the blue circle. You have an element of living your best life and wealth and yearning for value and worth, right? That's the Venus and Taurus. And then we have the infighting element is the Aries, the I'm ready to fight for myself kind of a thing. Everyone's defensive. And so putting all that together, I believe, is really the writing on the wall, really. The musical chairs of luxury, the musical chairs of the wealthy. And of course, the trickle down effect is we'll all have to experience that too, even though it's a fight for them. Does that make sense? All right, here we go. Let's get started. And good news, everybody. We have some eligible folks for the Best Comment Award, and it's a triple win. It's a tie, three-way tie, vibe. Shout out to you. No one you know has an excellent comment. Pam, who's really Terry, says first. So all of you At the very top, I also want to put on here that I encourage you to go back if you haven't read my response to Vibe. Still chewing on this, because the big challenge is, are we just living in a really negative time, or is it the way that you're interpreting it and talking about in your CIRF reports really getting me down, kind of a thing? And that's not Vibe's words, but my interpretation of what Vibe is saying. It's an excellent comment, but I respond to it because we do need to sort this out. My goal is to give you accurate interpretation of how I think it's going to feel in the next week. And then because we have a feeling, then we can know what to look for in terms of how you're felt. That way you're not subconsciously just reacting out of something you don't know is there or you're trying to avoid. So we have the energy is one thing, and I want to go, there is no good or bad energy. It's just energy, and it's felt and interpreted by the subconscious in a certain manner. That's where I come in. So I don't know how I'm going to convey all that to you without creating a story in your head or creating an interpretation, whether good or bad. All right, let's get into the Dreambot first. But anyway, great comments, and Vibe started a really good conversation for all of us to consider. All right, in the Dreambot, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's just Venus going into Taurus. Best and food and mansion and staff. Loved is in there. Loved in all the different contexts. That's Venus. Loved as in feeling emotionally supported and loved, but also I loved the food and I loved the place that we had the event at. This is all Venus and Taurus. I mean, almost completely, almost exclusively. So anyway, that's what it is, in my opinion. All right, going back to the astrology, here's our overview. And if you remember, we had a lot of disruption happening starting last week. That disruption, or lots of tension and pressure, is continuing, and it actually goes to a climax this week with all these red arrows. We have conjunctions and squares. We'll talk about all of them, but we have these major shifts. So first is Venus going into Taurus. She's home in Taurus, so feels just great, but yearns for everything we just mentioned in the Dreambot. The Dreambot did a nice analysis of things that Venus wants to do and feel and experience in Taurus. Then Mercury finally leaves its conundrum and dullness and enters into fiery Aries. Sun shortly behind that, and then the moon right in crescendo for a new moon in Aries. So lots of Aries influence. You can start to see here the big shift. Overview is kind of like big Pisces still, seeing the writing on the wall, seeing kind of the ending, the drawdown, the decrease, and that includes the moon phase. And then once we get in the halfway point of the week, and after we've been climaxed, conflicted, then we've got the new moon in Aries. So big, strong shift just in that. And then just outside, we're just talking, I think 12 hours outside of our CIRF window, we have Pluto going into Aquarius, which is a big deal. All right, but probably just going to talk about that just a little bit here and then into the next week. But let's start drilling down. And I do have an interesting story. This is the value of the Dreambot, concluding the collective unconscious. There's so much dominant, influential energies this week that, of course, I waited until the last minute to do the Dreambot. And when I looked and put the memes together, it was obvious. It was Venus and Taurus. Well, I had forgotten to put Venus and Taurus into my summary slides and didn't even consider putting a chart here. So I added a chart, and that's the biggest news probably today on Thursday, the 16th. This is 5:30 p.m., 5:34 p.m. daylight savings time. How did everybody like to change their clocks? It's probably like tired for a week if I'm if it's anything like our experience. But anyway, at 5:34 p.m. daylight savings time, that's Central time zone, Venus entering Taurus, returning home. Kind of dampens down, kind of slows down, but it is much more mentality or emotions towards things like money, wealth, fun and experiences and the five senses, and loving, absolutely loving what you're doing. And things are a little slower in Taurus, but for a good reason, because how do you really enjoy something? Do you do it fast? Well, no, it takes a while to really enjoy anything that you're doing. You want it to last, don't you? Incidentally, time, when you're really in that experience, time tends to go away, and hence it feels very short, even though it might be a very long time that has transpired. But Venus going into here, into Taurus, is not occluded from pressures. And so I think this is where partly this musical chairs is coming from, is a Pluto, so upheaval. It feels like the end of, I mean, this feeds right into this musical chairs of wealth and worth and value, money. And it's the square over to Pluto with the emotions into it, heading right into it. So it's a big energetic day, as Venus is heading in, and so heading into Taurus, but feeling the impression here is the yearning for it, because it feels like it's ending. You're fighting against the ending of the worth, wealth, goals. Now Pluto is still in Capricorn, so more of the practical goals. But being earth signs, that's also true. So that's feeds into this decrease. It's like one of the chairs is being removed from the game of musical chairs. All right, so that's not even the half of it on the 16th. And I've got to move this over because I saw it move. All right, there we go. So now what I had before was a big focus on Mercury, Neptune, and the Sun. This is all very Pisces. Obviously, Saturn we're getting used to into Pisces. That'll be interesting as it wears on. Limits of compassion and how that transpires, especially when Saturn stays there, Neptune stays in Pisces, but Mercury and the Sun enter into warlike or very defensive or aggressive Aries. That'll be very interesting. Lack of compassion will add to the need to defend self potentially, or the need to find self and learn of who you really are. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Thursday, the 16th, Mercury on an all-time dim. This is like the epitome of dim and weak. So we have Mercury in detriment in Pisces. You have Mercury combust, which means that he's sort of dimmed out by the sun. Impossible to see Mercury just because of that sheer light. It's like deer in the headlight phenomenon. And then a perfect conjunction with Neptune. So now things are really off kilter. It's a double Pisces. So it's a Mercury double weakened, double detriment, if you will. And it's very dreamy. It's very tricky. There's no logic. It's weak logic. Nothing makes any sense. You're almost living in an alternate reality. Well, that is pressured with Mars still. And we talked extensively last week about this. And this is the fighter. You're pressured in adaptable Mars because it's Gemini, very, very tries to be rational, but there is no rational in this whole chart now because of Mercury in its weakened state, triple weakened, if you will. And now pressured against getting stuff done. So it's very tricky to think, to logically assess, and to behave. It's all very difficult. You don't know what's next. This is all very unpredictable. Now, this is not all bad. The alignment with the square, this is a triple square, can be a good thing in this regard, because some response needs to happen in this. There's also a trine over to the Challenger, Saturn. We talked about this as well, which just adds, it might as well just be another square. I know it's not a 90 degrees, so therefore it's not a square, but it's easy energy with a Challenger, which is maleficent. And so it makes things hard. All these lines makes action, response, reactivity, rational assimilation of what's happening, your awareness levels, all those are harder. Everything's harder in that regard. Okay. And then again, like I said, Venus shifting, so worth and all things beauty and love and harmony, but worth and wealth are what Venus is in Taurus. Friday the 17th is the combust happens with Mercury passing Sun, but as we can see, they're not in parallel, so in vertical. So the cazimi technically never happens. They never get that close enough in inclination. And so what that means is Mercury just stays dulled as it passes through the Sun and never has a bright moment of clarity and just magic and mental aptitude that's beyond normal. But we don't get that because of that. We also have now Venus is making home in Taurus, squared off to the Moon and Pluto still. So it's a powerful yin state. Look at where the Moon is. It's in that waning crescent phase, drawing down, declining. It's a major phase in our 30-day cycle, roughly 30 days, 29 days. And in that cycle, we're to be extremely yin at this point. So try to be relaxed. It's not the time to start new things, new projects. It's not even time to imagine your next new moon cycle period. We're not even creating the vision yet of the next cycle. We're just receiving insights, receiving the karma that you put out in this cycle. We're receiving whatever gifts the universe says we need, or what you've maybe created along the way. But it's not a lot of doing. It's as much relaxing, receiving, breathing, spending time in the present moment, meditating, recouping. It's a recouping period for the moon phase. But this is going to make that very difficult. The squares there, the pressure, the need to get stuff done, that's going to be an internal conflict for most of us. Right? Need to be doing something. That's that. But what trumps this? Well, it's the moon phase that trumps this energy in terms of what you need to be doing here, which is until the new moon, you need to be relaxing, resting, rejuvenating, receiving, be in a good yin state. Okay. All right, now Saturday. Now I put Saturday and Sunday together because smashed right between them is basically midnight. This is Central Time, Central Daylight Time, 11:24 p.m. This is when Mercury is transiting into Aries. So mentally, it's a relief. Now, not completely, because they're still technically within a conjunction of the Sun, i.e. combust. And technically within a loose conjunction of Neptune, so things might be a little bit more dreamy, but just being out of Pisces alone is a huge lift to logic, to communication, to even desire to think, and to commute and travel. Short-term travel is Mercury as well. But thoughts, gaining a lot more motivation, a lot more momentum, even though technically still within a combust state. So that's why I put that right in between. There's no point in putting all the separate Saturday and Sunday in there. It's just over the weekend. The biggest news is Mercury shifting out of Pisces. Okay. Then another bam, the zodiacal annual phase ends, and so Sun leaves the last of Pisces, enters into Aries. This is the spring equinox. It happens at 4:24 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And yes, it's a very yang kind of sensation. But remember, Moon in Pisces, and then the moon phase is a total yin phase in this 30-day cycle. So we got an annual cycle that's much more powerful and yang. And we have the lunar shorter phase that is more yin. So that's just going to be another kind of hit to the inner conflict. Feeling wise, it's, man, shouldn't I be doing something? No, I just don't feel like it. Maybe might be the internal dialogue there. There is so this square here exacerbates just the fact that Sun is in Aries, getting ready for a new moon. It can be more defensive, and this exacerbates it. The triple square over to Mars. Mars, obviously, home to Aries, the ruler of Aries, and it's maleficent, aligned, malaligned. And so the energy from home is kind of energetically the furthest away from its home, and always yearns to be home. So everything is kind of mad, angry, aggressive, easily defensive, getting defensive. That's the orientation of Aries. That is felt, in my opinion. Now, another hidden thing is that the Sun is going to be contraparallel in this time. So they're in a square. I'm sorry. No, this is Sun and Mercury. So they are in a conjunction 3 degrees away, 3.5 degrees away from each other, and widening. And so technically within a combust, but they are now in conflict with each other. That's the contraparallel. They're on opposite ends of the inclination. And so it's conflicted. That's what that means. Now, mine now is strong, weak only by conjunction or combust, but deeply conflicted. So that's just a fourth conflict here. Well, fifth, and Venus square Pluto. I'm sorry, guys. Lots of internal conflict here. Mind is everywhere. Mind's now just waking up basically from how long? A couple of weeks of kind of sleep and lack of awareness and all that. Now just waking up. And then you've got the Sun coming out of hibernation, ready to roar, ready to go. So a lot of yang, but the lunar phase is not supportive of that. It's a lot of yin. So it's just an inner conflict. Sorry to say that. Tuesday, the 21st, we have a powerful new moon. This is at 12:23 p.m. And it's on March 21st. That's Tuesday. So it's a powerful Aries new moon, ready to roar, ready to fight. It's a massive switch. You can see how now we're down to just 2 faraway planets, distant planets in Pisces, and everything else is not only Aries. I can't say everything else. A lot of other planets are in Aries, A, and B, conflicted while they're there. It makes for a lot of aggressiveness. Venus still squared over to Pluto, so this sensation of decrease in terms of wealth and the musical chairs of the beautiful, sensory loving experiences. is hard to get. It's conflicted from that, and then you're yearning for it. You have more people yearning for the experience of wealth, luxury, worth, value, and they may not be getting it because of this. We're going to see a lot of victims in this. A lot of people who attune to the victim mindset we're going to see in this alignment. It's a false sense of power, though, when you empower yourself with the victim mindset. Okay, beware the victim. That was true for our Pisces alignments with these squares, and it's also going to be more true now with the Aries. And so, ready to fight. Now, there is an opportunity here in this. This is a new moon cycle, and it's in Aries. Very first part of Aries, by the way. And that's what allows us to have another new moon in Aries in April. The next new moon is in Aries. And that's going to be very late Aries. And that's going to be a total solar eclipse. But this one is kind of your practice run. This is your practice run for a 6-month long eclipse cycle. You get to try this out in the first 30 days. And so the cycle starts here. This is when you're imagining your accomplishments in this next yang phase, which is the waxing part of the moon's phase, roughly 2 weeks, up until the full moon, maybe a little bit past the full moon, depending on what you're doing. So you get to imagine something Aries that you want to accomplish, something about self, something about your rights. Boundaries is a good thing, but understanding self is at the epitome of Aries, finding self. So some sort of identity, maybe not change, but identity learning who you are with your values, identifying what's important to you. That would be a mix of what Venus wants to be doing as she faces like this power and control thing, making her want to feel more worth and more value. But there is that opportunity for this 30-day cycle in Aries, and it's a sextile over to Pluto. So instead of feeling all this conflict, and you'll notice that, I think, when you start thinking of justification for getting back or fighting or pushing your will on others or controlling others, once you see that justification, there's probably an underlying sense of that you're a victim. Beware the victim. Instead, you can shift over to this sextile over to Pluto and get a lot of inner power. Okay, and you're going to use this for a magnificent way to carry out the Aries plan that you've got at the new moon. At the new moon, the ceremony is, here's what I'm going to achieve in the next couple of weeks. So, and I'm going to use this opportunity to find the deeper power that I have in Pluto. Then on Wednesday, it's start your engines. The moon has progressed sufficiently in there to really start up. Maybe the key's now in the ignition and you're starting to turn that. So the car maybe not be going anywhere yet, but the engine is humming. And so we're really starting to put things in place, ready to start carrying out the goals that were set at the new moon. The wheels start, the brake starts to release, and the accelerator starting to just lightly be pushed a little bit. And it's hard because in Aries is very impulsive. So right at the new moon, we're just going to want to be turning on the engine and slamming the accelerator to the floor and get started. Well, that's not really how that lunar phase has worked. Again, also, I really want you to pay attention to this cycle because this 30-day cycle is a freebie for you. You can try out the Aries energy and what's possible because in that total solar eclipse, at the time of the eclipse, you're going to make that intention for Aries, an Aries type intention of what you're going to get done in your life in the next 6 months. So you get to do just like a little taster here, something identity related, something Aries related, the fire, and then see what happens in this next 30 days. Make your adjustments at the total solar eclipse and really make it a powerful 6 months of the Aries total solar eclipse. And then this is just a little bonus chart. This is 7:30 morning of the 23rd, and this is just showing you Pluto going into Aquarius. Pluto will go direct and then retrograde and actually go back into Capricorn and just dance on this cusp for quite a while. And so we get a little dabble of Pluto in Aquarius, but we are reminiscent of the 1780s, mainly 1778, right after the Revolutionary War, but other Revolutionary Wars were there. And it's a rebellious sign, Aquarius. And there's either power, kind of ending to old power structures, ways of ruling, but also technology, revolution in technology, all the signs of revolution that you can think of are appropriate in Aquarius. All right, what's up with this decrease? We talked about why it's there in the I-Ching. It says the inner strength that comes from bearing an unanticipated loss. And we think it's going to be like worth and wealth kind of a thing with a chair for the wealthy being removed. And then the trickle down will probably be affected by that as well. Hopefully not pulled into the direct fight, but you never know. The inner strength that comes from bearing an unanticipated loss can be balanced by an increase in inner strength and insight. And that's just exactly what you have at the new moon for this new moon cycle in Aries. You have that sextile over to Pluto, so you have deep inner strength. So you have to just kind of choose whether or not you want to spend all your efforts fighting, conflicted, and punching through the obstacles, or to sit back in a proper yin state and find your inner strength deep inside. A decrease in one area of your life will give rise to an eventual increase in another. Remember that. And I cover that in the solution slide. In general, a decrease can free the spirit and fill the soul with a lofty and satisfying sense of purpose. So then in line 3, it says 2's company, 3's a committee. Letting go of extraneous relationships is suggested here. And that matches Venus square Pluto. It's kind of a loss of relationship, or some parts of relationship end and restart. So that's a kind of a culling, if you will. People that aren't supportive of you, aren't understanding and accepting of you, those are the people who are to be considered for the coal. Line 5, natural good luck is here. Great fortune is your destiny now, and you need fear nothing. Enjoy, invest. Higher energies are supporting you. That's line 5, and that's quite strange from decrease. But what's the advantage of decrease? Well, in the world of investing, buy low, sell high is true in all cases for building good wealth. And so this produces an opportunity. If indeed there's a big decrease, there's going to be an opportunity there. Here's our energy chart. And I'm going to show you this before we summarize the energies or the influence. But you can see the red line. These are two powerful energies. We start the week with Pisces high, Aries low, and then this is when Sunday, Mercury goes into Aries, and then the sun and then the moon all are in Aries. So Aries is very dominant by the end, and Pisces is much weaker. And before we go to the solution, let's make sure I give you the influence, the overview. This is the summary. It's a musical chairs of life, but more along the lines of money, worth, wealth. So we begin with a strong, motivated Pisces energy, but with a very dulled and weak mind. I mean, very weak mind. Things don't seem rational and logical, and instead seem dreamy and otherly, with an obsession over endings and decrease and overall pessimism. Over the weekend, the astrological domino begins with Mercury entering Aries. Suddenly, logic strengthens, more people become self-aware again, and then the spring equinox shifts the collective energies to the growth, vigor, impulsiveness, vitality, and sprouting out of hibernation. The new moon on the 21st kickstarts an enormous potential for self-identity, confidence, passion, courage, defending your character and vision. All right, so lots of opportunities there. Just have to carry this out correctly. All right, let's move back to here, our note taker, and we will cover the solution. We start with the I-Ching. Small influences. Are you familiar with this one? We've come around and around with this. It's basically focus on your small things. You don't have to be doing big world-changing things. Just worry about yourself, and collectively together, if we all do that same things, kind of like some of these movements that we have for worldwide freedom are along this line. We're not going to make a difference individually, but if we all gather together, not even gather together, we just do your thing, and we can make a big impact on the world if we all follow the same values. That's the hard part, though. We all have different values. Softer influences predominate as the power of smaller forces accumulate, making this time for smooth and friendly persuasion. The ebb and flow of events are like waves in the sea, and there are periods of low tide. This matches the decrease that we saw in the I-Ching influence. Gentleness is the key word here. Regarding whatever is on your mind right now, gentleness combined with determination is likely to generate more progress than brute force ever could. So, I'm not going to say this one again, so this is a foot stomper, but you must harvest your raw Aries energy at the beginning of the new moon and employ it very carefully. The problem here is that Aries is going to get tricked into conflict, probably because it is quick. It's a quick energy that wants to fight back and protect itself. And with those squares makes it very hard. So we have to learn how to take that raw energy within, maybe even anger, maybe irritability, channel it, harvest it, organize it like a human battery, and then intend. So this is the new moon. Intend what you're going to do with that now harnessed energy. It's no longer anger. It's just energy. It's been harvested. And then we're going to channel it later for a certain behavior, whatever behavior is required to carry out the intention that you stamped on that energy. All right, put our new moon into the calculator, and what we get is hexagram 25 of the rave, and we also get Sidereal Pisces. So that's pretty cool. Let's talk about hexagram 25, innocence. This is perfect Aries. The perfection of action through uncontrived and spontaneous nature. This is Aries. This is a spontaneity that can seize opportunities. But we have line 3, sensibility. The recognition that innocent action does not in itself guarantee success. The power of the ego to withstand failure and still remain its nature. The power of the spirit to withstand failure and shock. Now, the downside of this energy, this line, is that you also have the potential loss of spirit through failure or shock. So When we see loss and we see shock, are you going to be able to stay with it? Are you going to dispense and lose yourself in that moment and create some mistakes for yourself? I wouldn't. So the power of the spirit to withstand failure and shock. I'm not so sure anything will shock us anymore, will it? You ever thought about that? What would shock you? All right. Here's our very complex solution slide. And we remember we have small influences. Avoid bold action. Be gentle, be kind. But remain determined and trust the masses doing the same thing, maybe without evidence. And then the rave says the ability to withstand failure. To withstand your spirit through when there's failure or shock, or not. Lose yourself, lose your power, everything. So it's a very key pivotal moment here. And then we have Sidereal Pisces to work with. So here we go. The I-Ching solution seems to contradict the energetic shift to Aries, but it actually greatly supports where the moon is during this week, including the Aries new moon on Tuesday. Even though the shift to Aries will indeed feel extra motivating and powerful, the warrior spirit exacerbated by the squares, it's not yet time to carry out the plans for the Aries lunar cycle. The rave suggests it's important to remain flexible and spontaneous this week to better withstand the failures and or shocks this week might hold. And that's good because the Aries energy is flexible and spontaneous. Sidereal Pisces, extremely important to up level your spiritual practice. It means that everything we do this week, anything you see and experience, should be included as part of your spiritual growth. The I-Ching and Pisces agree. Do your small part and trust that others are doing the same. Finally, the rave warns to watch for the loss of innocence. And that would be the main way I think that most of us regular folks get roped into and get mainly influenced by the musical chairs for the wealthy as they fight and toil and point fingers at each other. It's going to be interesting. May not happen, huh? But the energy is there. So we'll see how the free will turns out in terms of what actually happens next week. All right, here's the quote or the affirmation that I'm going to invoke. And it says, there is ultimate safety in being my most authentic self. So a very Aries statement. Knowing who I am and being myself is the gift of Aries. I am connected. That's the Pisces solution here, making everything that I experience part of my spiritual growth, and then trusting that the rest of us are also achieving the same thing. Where we go one, we go all. Now, isn't that interesting how this statement here, didn't even notice this until now, but it incorporates both the Aries, the undeniable Aries energy, and the gifts of Aries, as well as the Sidereal Pisces, because that's where it's happening. And this is what we're invoking in our behaviors, solution-wise. So it's remember to do both. And where we go one, where we go all. It's a very Pisces statement. And the connection there and the spiritual growth. All right. Well, there you have it, folks. I know, another really wacky, transitioning, energetically variety week. So hang in there. And hopefully I gave you some good strategies to make it through this. I think it's going to be very difficult for most of us, but not those who are watching the report. You got it right here. You got the script right here. You're ready for anything. You're ready for the failure, the shock, right? Ready to make that your spiritual growth. It's all indicated in the triangulation. This isn't me just making it up. It's all there. It's got its support. So just in case you get roped into the musical chairs of the wealthy, here's what you do. You can do this at a micro scale in your own life. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Thanks for the shares and the comments. Appreciate you. Love to all. Bye.